She never knew what it was to be chosen, never felt the warmth of a hand that sought her among so many gazes, never heard the word mine like a firm and secure embrace. At the Montana orphanage, where she grew up between cold walls and corridors that echoed lonely footsteps, Jenny Taylor learned early that love was a rare coin, a gift reserved for the fortunate. She, however, had never been among the chosen ones. The orphanage was an old building, almost a fortress of red bricks with frosted glass windows that filtered the golden light of dusk into melancholic tones. Inside, the aroma of homemade soup mixed with the smell of soap and waxed wood, creating an atmosphere that, despite its simplicity, carried the discreet warmth of an unlikely home. Montana's cold mornings brought a wind that danced on the skin like whispers of freedom, while snow transformed the landscape into a blank canvas, full of unwritten possibilities. Jenny was 7 years old when she understood that being chosen might not be her immediate destiny. On that golden autumn day, 2 families visited the orphanage. The children filled with hope, their eyes shining like stars in the dining hall, illuminated by the last rays of sun. She and Kelly Chilton, her best friend and confidant, dreamed together with anxious whispers. In their childish imagination, they would be adopted side by side, sharing the same new home, the same dreams, always walking hand in hand into the future. When the orphanage coordinator called Kelly, Jenny felt the world pause for an instant. There was no place for her in that moment, but something inside her small heart whispered that perhaps her time was yet to come. She cried that night, not from despair, but from an anticipated longing for the friend who would leave, hugging the pillow that kept secrets and whispered dreams. Kelly was more than a friend, she was her heart's sister, her anchor in a vast and uncertain world. They shared whispers, secrets, and dreams under the moonlight that entered timidly through the cracks of the dormitory windows, where the nuns watched over their steps with eyes both maternal and stern. Their friendship was a golden ray among the shadows of those walls, a silent promise that some bonds transcend distances and time. At 14, a new chapter was drawn for Jenny. She was finally chosen, and her young heart pulsed with the hope that the love she had dreamed of had finally arrived. The family that welcomed her, however, saw in her not a daughter, but a helpful assistant. She became useful, a silent presence who took care of chores and younger children with a dedication that was born not from obligation, but from her naturally generous heart. Although the maternal love she sought remained elusive, Jenny discovered something precious in those years. Her infinite capacity to care, to love without expecting reciprocation, to find beauty in small daily gestures. The simple room, shared meals, gazes that sometimes seemed not to see her, all of this shaped a young woman with a resilient heart and luminous soul. At 18, having reached adulthood, Jenny left that house, taking with her the few clothes she possessed and something much more valuable, a heart that, despite disappointments, refused to harden completely. Hope still pulsed in her veins like a soft melody, promising that the best chapters of her story were yet to be written. Jenny built a new life with the silent determination of one who learned to flourish even in arid soil. She got work as a teacher at a kindergarten in a welcoming school on the outskirts of Helena. There, among small children who still saw the world with eyes full of magic, she found her true purpose. She loved each of them like one who cultivates rare flowers with patience, tenderness, and the certainty that each small soul carried within itself a universe of possibilities. Despite the genuine joy that the children brought her, in Montana's silent nights, when the wind whispered ancient stories through the pines, Jenny felt a distant echo in her heart. It wasn't exactly loneliness, but the gentle awareness that there were still empty spaces waiting to be filled with a kind of love that transforms and completes. It was December 23, 1917. Christmas Eve, and also her birthday, a date she had always preferred to celebrate in the intimacy of her thoughts. On that special day, her school colleagues invited her to tea at Café de la Louise, a charming place decorated with pine garlands and illuminated by candles that danced like small golden flames, creating a fairy tale atmosphere. Jenny accepted the invitation with a shy smile. Wearing her best light blue dress, the color of Montana's clear sky, and the wool scarf she had received from the school principal the previous year. As she crossed the cozy salon of the cafe, something magical happened. "Jenny!" The voice was familiar, charged with emotion and recognition. There was Kelly, no longer the girl from the orphanage, but an elegant woman with a determined gaze and radiant smile. Beside her, a man of striking presence, Peter Clark, her fiancé, whose gentle eyes seemed capable of warming even the coldest nights of the mountain winter. The reunion was a symphony of emotional laughter, shared memories, and tears of joy. Jenny felt her heart awaken to a happiness long forgotten, as if a lost part of herself had finally come home. Peter's presence added something new to the equation, a warm and reassuring energy that made the entire environment seem more welcoming. In the weeks that followed the magical reunion at Café de la Louise, Thursdays became sacred for the trio. Jenny waited for these meetings with sweet anticipation, like one awaiting the first flower of spring after a harsh winter. The cafe became their private sanctuary, where laughter echoed between porcelain cups and slices of still warm apple pie. Kelly seemed radiant with the happiness of having reunited with her childhood friend. There was a contagious energy in her, an authentic joy that made her eyes shine like diamonds under the cafe's golden lights. She spoke about her wedding plans with Peter, about the dresses she had chosen, about the future she painted with vibrant and hopeful colors. Peter, in turn, revealed himself to be a man of fascinating layers. His green eyes had the depth of mountain lakes, and when he smiled, small wrinkles formed in their corners, telling stories of a heart that knew both joy and melancholy. He listened to Jenny's stories about the school children with genuine interest that warmed her heart unexpectedly. "You have a special gift with children," he said one afternoon, as they walked around the school grounds after one of their meetings. "It's as if you know exactly what they need to hear." Jenny blushed slightly, feeling butterflies dance in her stomach. "Maybe it's because I still remember what it was like to be one of them, lost and waiting for someone who believed in me." Peter stopped walking and turned to her, his eyes reflecting sincere admiration. "And now you are that person for them. What a precious gift you offer to the world, Jenny." In that moment, something changed between them. An invisible thread was woven, delicate as a spider's web at dawn, but strong enough to sustain dreams. Jenny felt a sweet vertigo, as if she were about to discover a secret that would change her life forever. The meetings became more frequent. Peter began visiting her at home, bringing books he thought she would like, wildflowers picked from the fields around the city, and stories of his travels that made Jenny's eyes shine with curiosity. He fixed small problems in her house with a tenderness that transformed simple tasks into gestures of care. Kelly, initially delighted with the growing friendship between her fiancé and her best friend, began to show subtle changes. Her smile sometimes seemed forced, and she made apparently innocent comments about the time Peter spent with Jenny, like small stones thrown into a serene lake. "You two have become so close," she said one afternoon, absent-mindedly stirring sugar in her teacup. "Sometimes I feel like you have your own secrets." Jenny laughed, trying to dissipate the tension that was beginning to form in the air. "We just talk about books and the school children. Nothing more." But there was more, and all three knew it. It was in the way Peter looked at Jenny when she spoke, as if each word were a melody he wanted to memorize. It was in the way Jenny lit up when she heard his footsteps approaching her house. It was in the comfortable silence they shared, which spoke louder than any conversation. One April afternoon, while Jenny watered the flowers in her small garden, Peter appeared with an unexpected gift, a small terracotta pot with sunflower seeds. "I thought you'd like to see them grow," he said, with a smile that melted hearts. "Sunflowers always seek the light, just like you." Jenny held the pot with trembling hands, feeling tears of emotion cloud her vision. "Peter, You what?" he asked softly, taking a step toward her. "I never thought anyone could see me like this," she whispered. He extended his hand and gently touched her face, his thumb caressing her cheek. "Jenny, you are the most beautiful light I've ever known. How could I not see you?" In that moment, both knew they had crossed an invisible line. The love being born between them was like an aurora borealis, rare, magical, and impossible to ignore. But they also knew that this nascent love carried with it the weight of a promise already made, of a heart that belonged to another person. Guilt and joy danced together in their chests, creating a complex melody that only hearts in love can understand. The weeks that followed were a mixture of ecstasy and torment. Jenny and Peter fought against their feelings, but it was like trying to contain the ocean with their hands. Each chance encounter, each shared conversation, each glance that lasted a second longer than it should, fed the flame that grew between them. Kelly, with the sharpened intuition of a woman in love, began to perceive the changes. Her behavior oscillated between attempts to bring Jenny and Peter closer together, perhaps in the hope of dispelling her own suspicions, and moments of poorly disguised jealousy that left everyone uncomfortable. It was on one of those tense afternoons that destiny decided to reveal its best-kept secrets. On a golden May morning, while Jenny arranged her materials at school, something unexpected happened. Kelly arrived earlier than usual for their meetings, carrying with her a different energy. There was in her eyes a mixture of determination and vulnerability that made Jenny's heart race. "I need to talk to you," said Kelly, her hands trembling slightly as she held a small velvet box. "About Peter. About us. About everything." Jenny felt the world pause around her. The moment had arrived that, deep down, she knew would come. They sat in the school's small garden, under the generous shade of a century-old tree that had witnessed so many secrets and confessions. Kelly took a deep breath before speaking. "Jenny, I see how you look at each other. I see how he smiles when he talks about you, how your eyes shine when he's nearby." Her voice was soft, without traces of anger or jealousy. I can no longer pretend I don't notice." "Kelly, Jenny began, but her friend gently raised her hand. "Let me finish." Kelly opened the small box, revealing the engagement ring that sparkled under the light filtered through the leaves. For weeks, I've been fighting with myself, trying to understand my own feelings. And then I realized something important. I love Peter, but not in the way he deserves to be loved. Jenny felt tears forming in her eyes, a mixture of relief and compassion flooding her heart. I love him like one loves a dear brother, a precious friend, Kelly continued, her voice gaining strength. But when I see you two together, I see something I never had with him. Something real, deep, true. The silence that followed was not heavy, but full of mutual understanding. Jenny extended her hand and gently touched Kelly's arm. "Thank you," Jenny whispered, "for being brave enough to recognize this." Kelly smiled, and for the first time in weeks, her smile was genuine and free. "You have my blessing, Jenny. In fact, you always had it. I just needed to be honest with myself first." That afternoon, when Peter arrived for what he thought was another common meeting, he found two transformed women. Kelly received him with a warm embrace and, with grace and dignity, returned the ring she had carried for months. "Peter," she said, "you are a wonderful man, and you deserve to be loved the way Jenny loves you. And I deserve to find someone who loves me the way you love her." Peter was stunned for a moment, processing the words. When his eyes met Jenny's, he saw in them the same mixture of love, hope, and vulnerability he felt in his own heart. "Are you sure?" he asked Kelly, his voice laden with respect and care. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," she replied, radiant. "Now go, you two have a lot of lost time to make up for." The months that followed were like a golden dream unfolding across the Montana prairie. Jenny and Peter finally free to explore the love that had grown between them like wildflowers, natural, beautiful, and impossible to contain. Peter courted her with a tenderness that melted Jenny's heart. He brought her poetry books, wrote small letters that she kept as treasures, and on Sunday afternoons, they walked through the fields talking about dreams they could now share openly. "You know, I've always dreamed of having a family," he confessed on one of these walks, stopping to pick wild daisies that he intertwined in Jenny's hair. "But I never imagined it could be as perfect as this." Jenny blushed, feeling butterflies dance in her stomach. "I also dreamed. But I learned not to have too many hopes." "You changed that, Peter. You taught me that it's safe to dream again." They married in an intimate ceremony under the same century-old tree where so many truths had been revealed, with Kelly as maid of honor and some school children scattering flower petals along the path. It was a simple celebration but overflowing with genuine love. Jenny wore her mother's dress, one of the few memories she had of her carefully preserved by the orphanage nuns. Peter had gotten a new suit for the occasion, but what truly beautified him was the radiant smile he couldn't contain. When they exchanged vows, their words were simple but profound. "Jenny," said Peter, holding her trembling hands, "you taught me that love isn't about being chosen by chance, but about choosing to love every day. I promise to choose you always." "Peter," Jenny replied, her voice emotional but firm, "you showed me that I was always worthy of love. I promise to build with you a family where no child will feel unchosen." The small school they had created together flourished like a well-tended garden. With Jenny as head teacher and Peter taking care of administration, they transformed the space into a true home for dozens of children from the community. It was more than a school, it was a refuge where love and learning walked hand in hand. 6 months after the wedding, Jenny discovered she carried in her womb the living proof of the love that had flourished between them. The pregnancy brought indescribable joy, but also a new awareness of responsibility. "Our daughter," Peter whispered one night, with his hand gently resting on Jenny's rounded belly. "She will never wonder if she is loved. She will grow up knowing every day that she is chosen, desired, celebrated." Jenny felt tears of happiness stream down her face. "Grace," she said softly. "We'll call her Grace, because she is the grace that God granted us after so much waiting." Grace's birth was a moment of pure magic. When Jenny held her daughter in her arms for the first time, she felt as if all the pieces of her life had finally found their places. That tiny child, with curious eyes and clenched fists, was the materialization of all the dreams she hadn't even dared to dream. Peter, seeing his wife and daughter together, felt an emotion so intense he had to lean against the wall. There was his family not by chance or convenience, but by true love and conscious choice. Grace's first years were full of discoveries and joys. The girl grew up among the school's classrooms, surrounded by other children who saw her as a younger little sister. Jenny managed to perfectly balance motherhood with teaching, and Peter expanded the school project, gaining support from the community and even from local authorities. "You know," Jenny said one afternoon, watching Grace play in the school courtyard while other children surrounded her with laughter, "I used to think being chosen was about someone wanting me. Now I understand it's about choosing to love, every day, unconditionally." Peter hugged her from behind, gently kissing her neck. "And you choose to love not just our family, but every child who walks through these doors. You're extraordinary, my dear." The school became known throughout the region. Families came from neighboring towns to enroll their children, attracted by the reputation for excellence and care that Jenny and Peter had built. They hired more teachers, expanded the facilities, and created special programs for children with difficulties. Kelly, who had moved to a larger city and found true love with a gentle doctor, visited them regularly. She had become Grace's honorary aunt and one of the school's greatest supporters. "You've accomplished something magical here," she said during one of her visits, watching the children play in the renovated courtyard. "This school is more than a place of learning, it's a place where hearts are healed." Jenny smiled, holding Grace in her arms while the little girl slept peacefully. "Every child who passes through here takes a piece of us, and leaves a piece of themselves. That's how you build a legacy of love." On a golden autumn afternoon, while watching Grace run through the golden fields around the school, Jenny reflected on her journey. From the unchosen girl in the orphanage to a beloved woman, devoted mother, and respected educator, every experience, every pain, every joy had contributed to shaping her into the person she had become. Peter approached, putting his arm around her. "What are you thinking about?" "About how life has its own plans," she replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I thought I would never be chosen, but now I understand I was being prepared to choose. To choose to love you, to choose to be a mother, to choose to make a difference in these children's lives." He kissed her gently on the forehead. "And I feel like the luckiest man in the world to have been chosen by you." As the sun set, painting Montana's sky in shades of pink and gold, Jenny knew her story was exactly as it should be. It wasn't a story about being chosen by others, it was about choosing to love, choosing to forgive, choosing to build something beautiful even when beginnings seemed impossible. And in the echo of Grace's laughter mixed with that of the other children, Jenny heard the sweetest melody that exists, the music of love that multiplies when shared freely, generously, unconditionally. Time seemed to unfold in a slow, almost painful cadence, as if the past were intertwining with the present in a tight knot, difficult to untie. Jenny received a letter from Kelly saying she had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. It was a blow to Jenny's chest, a mixture of sadness, guilt, and longing for little Kelly, full of life that burned her soul. It was as if, in that moment, she was being summoned to revisit wounds that had never healed, to look into the eyes of that friend who, despite the distance, still inhabited her heart with an intense and disturbing presence. The image of Kelly, young and fragile, lost among the shadows of the orphanage, resurged like a broken mirror reflecting a part of herself that Jenny desperately tried to forget. Peter, silent in his concern, watched her with eyes that said more than words could express. He saw the internal struggle of the woman he loved, felt the fragility she hid under courage, and understood that this call from the past could not be ignored without consequences. He began to understand that the true test of their relationship wasn't in small daily joys, but in the capacity to face together the shadows that insisted on haunting their lives. The school, which was the sacred refuge where Jenny found her purpose, also became the stage for her inner transformation. Every child's smile, every look of admiration, every gesture of affection from those little students seemed like a balm that soothed old pains, a silent reminder that life still had beauty and meaning even in the darkest hours. In the weeks following receipt of the letter, Jenny plunged into deep introspection that worried Peter. She continued teaching her classes with the same dedication as always, but there was a shadow in her eyes that didn't go unnoticed. The children, with that peculiar sensitivity of childhood, seemed to sense something was different about their beloved teacher. They showed themselves more affectionate, closer, as if they wanted to protect her from an invisible danger. "You need to talk about this," Peter said one night, while they watched the stars from the porch of their small house. "Keeping everything inside won't make the pain disappear." Jenny rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the comforting warmth of his presence. "Sadness for someone who was always my family," she finally confessed. "Fear that our happiness is just a fragile illusion that can break at any moment by life's finiteness." Peter caressed her hair with infinite tenderness. "Our happiness is real, Jenny. It was built brick by brick, day after day. Kelly is part of your life, but doesn't define your future. You have enough strength to face this, and I'll be by your side whatever happens." His words were like a balm, but Jenny knew the real test was yet to come. Kelly then sent a telegram. "Arriving Tuesday, afternoon train. Need to talk to you." The simplicity of the message contrasted with the complexity of emotions it awakened. Jenny spent the entire Monday in nervous agitation, cleaning the house that was already clean, reorganizing the school books, doing anything that could distract her from growing anxiety. When they finally met at Montana's small train station, time seemed to stop. Kelly descended from the train with slow movements, clearly weakened by illness, but still carrying that natural elegance that had always distinguished her. Her face was thinner, her eyes deeper, but the smile she directed at Jenny was genuine, loaded with a vulnerability that deeply touched her old friend's heart. "Jenny," Kelly said, and her voice sounded different, more fragile, but also more true. "Thank you for always having open arms for me." They hugged with initial hesitation that soon transformed into a tight embrace, full of years of longing and dreams that, deep down, they knew wouldn't come true. Peter watched from a distance, respecting that intimate moment. In the following days, the three navigated turbulent emotional waters. Kelly settled in a small boarding house in the town center, but spent most of her time at Jenny and Peter's house or at the school. It was as if she were trying to recover lost years, absorbing every detail of the life her old friend had built. The doctor boyfriend left her when he learned about the illness. Living together revealed a transformed Kelly. She spoke openly about her mistakes, about regrets, about the emptiness she had felt for so long. "I always had everything," she said one afternoon, while watching the children play in the school courtyard, "but never knew what it was to truly love or be loved. You have something I never managed to reach." Jenny felt her heart breaking and healing at the same time. Her childhood friend, that fragile girl who shared dreams and fears in the orphanage, was there again, vulnerable and needing love. But now Jenny was no longer the abandoned child desperately seeking acceptance. She was a strong woman, with a forming family and a clear mission in life. The turning point came on a stormy afternoon, when Kelly broke down in tears while helping Jenny organize school materials. "I ruined everything," she sobbed. "I lost the only man who truly loved me, lost the only true friend I had, and now I'm losing life too. What remains for me?" Jenny felt all her strength and love for the sister the orphanage had given her. "Love remains," Jenny responded, holding Kelly's trembling hands. "The love you can still give, the love you can still receive. It's not too late to find meaning, Kelly. You just need to stop looking in the wrong place." Peter, who had observed the conversation with growing admiration for Jenny, began to see Kelly with different eyes too. No longer as the woman he had once been engaged to, but as a person in deep suffering who deserved compassion. Slowly, the three began to form a kind of unlikely family, united not by blood or romance, but by bonds of shared history and mutual forgiveness. Winter came early that year, covering Montana with a blanket of snow thicker than usual, as if nature wanted to wrap the town in a white and silent shroud. Grace was growing and learning to take her first steps. Kelly's presence had become strangely comforting, as if a long-lost piece of the puzzle of her life had finally found its place. Kelly showed touching dedication to Grace and the school that Jenny and Peter had created. Despite her debilitated physical condition, she insisted on helping in every way possible. Her skills with literature and history proved valuable, and she began teaching art classes to the older children. There was something deeply therapeutic about those afternoons when Kelly sat surrounded by children, teaching them to draw or telling stories of distant places she had visited during her years in Europe. "She's finding her purpose," Peter commented one afternoon, while they watched Kelly through the school window. She was there, even after class hours, decorating the room with colorful drawings the children had made. "Maybe this is the answer she was always looking for. We all need one," she murmured. Kelly just needed to discover that hers wasn't in the things she possessed, but in the love she could give. Kelly's transformation didn't go unnoticed by the community. People who initially viewed her with suspicion began to respect her for the work she did with the children. She had a special gift for dealing with the most difficult students, those who arrived at school carrying their own pains and traumas. Perhaps it was because she recognized something of herself in them, the desperate need to be accepted and loved. One day, while organizing books in the school's improvised library, Kelly made a confession that would change everything. "Jenny," she said, hesitating as if the words were stones too heavy to carry, "I never told you the truth about why I left Montana that first time." Jenny stopped what she was doing, feeling a chill run down her spine. "When I learned that you and Peter were getting closer, I felt something I had never experienced before, not exactly jealousy, but fear. Fear that you would discover who I really was inside." Kelly continued, words flowing in a torrent of painful honesty. "I always pretended to be strong, secure, superior. But the truth is I was as lost as you, Jenny. The only difference is that you were never afraid to show your vulnerability, while I hid mine behind masks. When I saw love growing between you, I realized I would never be capable of loving or being loved that way, and that terrified me." Jenny felt tears burning her eyes. "Kelly," she whispered, "you never needed to pretend with me. We were just two lost children trying to find our place in the world." Kelly smiled through tears. "I know that now. But back then I thought admitting weakness meant losing everything. It was only when I truly lost everything that I learned true strength comes from shared vulnerability." This conversation marked a definitive turning point in their friendship. For the first time since childhood, Jenny and Kelly could be completely honest with each other, without masks or pretenses. It was as if they had finally found their way back to the simplicity of those days in the orphanage, when they shared whispered dreams under worn blankets. Peter observed this reconciliation with a mixture of admiration and relief. He had feared Kelly's presence might shake the foundations of the life he had built with Jenny, but was discovering the opposite was true. Jenny's capacity to love unconditionally only made him love her even more deeply. And Kelly, stripped of her old pretenses, revealed herself to be a person he could genuinely care about, not as a former love, but as a friend who deserved compassion and support. Christmas was approaching, and with it came an unexpected surprise. Kelly announced she had made a decision. She wanted to donate a substantial amount of money to the school, an inheritance she had received from a distant uncle in Europe. "I want this place to keep growing," she said, her eyes shining with a determination Jenny hadn't seen in years. "I want other children to have the opportunity we had in the orphanage, not to be chosen by perfect families, but to choose to be happy despite circumstances." Kelly's generosity opened possibilities that Jenny and Peter barely dared dream. They could expand the school, hire more teachers, offer scholarships to children from even more needy families. But more important than the financial aspect was the symbolism of the gesture. Kelly was investing in a future she might not live to see, but in which she believed deeply. Christmas preparations brought renewed joy to everyone. The school children prepared a special presentation, and Kelly took charge of rehearsing with them, a small show about the true magic of Christmas, not that of material gifts, but of shared love. Jenny, even while caring for Grace, insisted on participating in all preparations, sewing costumes and rehearsing songs. On Christmas Eve, while snow fell softly outside, the three sat around the small tree decorated by the children. Kelly held a cup of hot tea in her hands, watching Jenny and Peter exchange loving glances. "You know," she said softly, "this is the first time in my life I've felt truly at home at Christmas." Jenny extended her hand and touched Kelly's arm. "You were always welcome, Kelly. We just needed to find our way back to each other." Peter nodded, adding, "Family isn't just blood. It's choice, it's forgiveness, it's unconditional love. And you're part of our family now." That night, for the first time in decades, Kelly slept in peace. There were no more secrets between them, no more masks to maintain. It was as if the circle that had broken so many years ago in the orphanage was finally closing, but this time with a wisdom that only pain and forgiveness can bring. The new year brought subtle but significant changes. Kelly seemed to have found renewed energy, despite her physical condition. She dedicated herself to the school with growing passion, developing new teaching methods and creating special programs for children with learning difficulties. It was as if she were racing against time, trying to leave a legacy of love and education that would endure beyond her physical presence. Jenny, admiring Grace's play with her father, felt a deep peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Having Kelly by her side again, but this time as a true friend, as they were when they were 7 years old, was a gift she had never expected to receive. Grace bounced and hugged her mother, father, and Aunt Kelly. "You're the strongest woman I know," Kelly said to Jenny. "You survived abandonment, built a beautiful life, found true love. This beautiful baby is lucky to have you as a mother." These words reminded her that she had come a long way since that orphan girl who thought she would never be chosen. Peter watched the two friends caring for his daughter with paternal love that grew each day. He had feared Kelly's presence might complicate his family life, but was discovering the opposite was true. Kelly wasn't trying to take anyone's place. She was creating her own space, a unique and precious place as a loving and protective aunt. One night, when Grace was playing in the garden, Kelly had a respiratory crisis that frightened everyone. The doctor, who finally managed to reach them, was clear in his diagnosis. The disease was progressing rapidly, and Kelly might not have much time. The news fell like lightning on the family that had formed so recently. "I'm not afraid," Kelly said with a serenity that surprised everyone. "I've made peace with my past, found my purpose, and watched Grace grow. My life finally makes sense." Jenny held her friend's hand, feeling as if part of her heart was breaking again. "You can't leave us now," she whispered. "Grace needs her Aunt Kelly." Kelly smiled through tears. "Grace will always have an Aunt Kelly. Every time you tell her about friendship, forgiveness, and second chances, I'll be there. Every time she needs to remember it's possible to transform and find redemption, you can tell my story." It was a powerful promise, a form of immortality that transcended physical death. In the following days, Kelly dedicated herself to writing letters for Grace, one for each birthday until 18. In each letter, she shared life lessons, stories about friendship with Jenny, and the unconditional love she felt for the girl who had brought light back to her life. "So she always knows she was loved before she was born," Kelly explained, sealing the last letter with trembling hands. Spring bloomed fully that year, as if nature wanted to offer one last gift to Kelly before her departure. The gardens around the school filled with vibrant colors, and the sweet aroma of Montana's wildflowers perfumed the air with almost magical intensity. Kelly spent her last conscious days sitting on the porch, holding Grace, now almost 2 years old, in her lap, whispering stories and lullabies that the little one seemed to absorb with almost supernatural attention. "She'll remember you," Jenny said one golden afternoon, watching Kelly gently rock her daughter. "It may not be a conscious memory, but it will be kept in her heart forever." Kelly smiled, that serene smile she had found only in her last months of life. "True love always leaves invisible marks," she murmured. "And this little princess will carry the best of all of us." Peter had become incredibly close to Kelly during those final weeks. Past resentments had completely dissolved, replaced by genuine admiration for the courageous woman who had found redemption through unconditional love. He began to see her not as the person who had hurt his heart, but as a soul who had fought bravely against her own fears to find the light. The community that had formed around the school had also adopted Kelly as family. The children made special drawings for her. Parents brought her favorite foods, and everyone took turns ensuring she was never alone. It was as if everyone wanted to give back, somehow, all the love she had poured over that special place. One May morning, Kelly woke weaker than usual, but with eyes shining with deep peace. "Today is a special day," she said to Jenny, who had spent the night by her side. "I can feel it." There was no fear in her voice, only acceptance and quiet gratitude that deeply touched Jenny's heart. Throughout that day, Kelly received visits. Every child from the school came to say goodbye, bringing flowers, drawings, and sweet words spoken with childhood's unique sincerity. "Thank you for teaching us it's never too late to be kind," said Emma, an 8-year-old girl who had become especially attached to Kelly. "I'll always remember you when I draw." When the sun began to set, painting the sky with the golden colors Kelly had always loved, she asked to be taken to the big tree in the school garden, the same tree under which Jenny and Peter had first met, where so many important conversations had taken place. There, surrounded by Jenny, Peter, and little Grace, Kelly breathed deeply the perfumed spring air. "You gave me something I never thought I deserved," she said with a soft but clear voice. "A true family, purpose, the chance to love without conditions." Jenny held her hand, feeling as if her own heart was being rewritten with words of forgiveness and unconditional love. "You were always part of our family, Kelly. We just needed to find our way back to each other." Kelly smiled, gently touching Jenny's face. "Take good care of our little Grace," she whispered. "And when she's old enough to understand, tell her that her Aunt Kelly loved her from the first moment she saw her." These were her last consciously spoken words, and she fell asleep right there, under the tree, surrounded by the love she had finally learned to give and receive. Kelly departed during the early morning, silently, like a whisper that dissolves in the wind. Jenny felt her absence immediately, a sudden emptiness that woke her. When she found her friend in eternal peace, still with a gentle smile on her lips, she felt deep pain mixed with immense gratitude. Kelly had found her redemption, had experienced true love, and had left a legacy of kindness that would endure forever. Kelly's funeral was a celebration of the life she had chosen to live in her last months. Montana's small church was packed not only with Jenny, Peter, and Grace, but with all the school children, their parents, teachers, and community members who had been touched by her transformation. Instead of tears of sadness, there were tears of gratitude for the privilege of having known that courageous soul who had found light even in darkness. Jenny read one of the letters Kelly had written for Grace, a letter that perfectly summarized the journey they had all traveled. "My dear Grace, when you read this, I will no longer be here physically, but I will always be in your heart. I learned from your mother that being chosen isn't a matter of luck or chance, it's a matter of love. Your mother chose me to be her friend when we were just two lost children. She chose me again to be her family when I most needed forgiveness. And you, my little princess, chose me to be your aunt before you were even born. True love is always a choice, and you taught me it's never too late to choose to love. In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Grace grew healthy and happy, filling the house with laughter and daily discoveries. The school prospered with the resources Kelly had left, allowing Jenny and Peter to expand even further their work with needy children. Every new child who arrived at the school was received with the unconditional love that Kelly had helped cultivate. Peter proved to be a dedicated and loving father, sharing with Jenny all the responsibilities and joys of parenthood. He had found in Grace an even greater reason to be the best man possible, and the little one adored him with that unique devotion children have for their fathers. On quiet nights, when preparing his daughter for sleep, he sang the same lullabies Kelly had sung, keeping alive the memory of the woman who had become an essential part of their family. Years passed like pages of a well-loved book, each bringing its own surprises, challenges, and moments of pure joy. Grace grew surrounded by her parents' love and Kelly's living memory, which remained present in every corner of the school, in every story told, in every gesture of kindness that Jenny and Peter taught the children. When Grace turned 8, she was already known throughout the community as a special child, not just for the angelic beauty she inherited from her mother, but for the way she distributed smiles and hugs as if they were precious gifts. She had the gift of making any person feel seen and loved, an ability that seemed to be born with her, but which Jenny knew had been cultivated by the stories about Aunt Kelly she told every night. "Mommy," Grace asked one golden September morning while they prepared to go to school, "why did I never meet Aunt Kelly, but feel like she's always with me?" Jenny paused, brush in the air, feeling her heart tighten with emotion. It was the first time Grace had asked this question so directly, and Jenny knew the moment had come to open the first of the letters Kelly had left. That afternoon, after classes ended and Peter went home to prepare dinner, Jenny and Grace sat under the big tree in the school garden, the same tree where Kelly had spent her last conscious moments. With slightly trembling hands, Jenny opened the envelope marked for Grace, and began reading with a soft voice. "My dear Grace, if you're hearing this letter, it means you can already understand stories about true friendship. I want you to know you were the greatest gift I received in my entire life. When I first held you in my arms, I felt as if my heart finally understood why it had been created to love without conditions, to protect the most fragile, to leave the world better than we found it." Grace listened with solemn attention, her large expressive eyes fixed on her mother's face. "Aunt Kelly really loved me, didn't she?" she asked when Jenny finished reading. "More than you can imagine, my love," Jenny replied, hugging her daughter. "And you know what else? She continues to love you. True love never dies, it just transforms." That night, Grace insisted on putting Kelly's letter under her pillow, as if she would dream with the words. Peter found Jenny in the kitchen long after, contemplating a cup of tea that had cooled in her hands. "She's beginning to understand," Jenny said softly. "And I don't know if I'm ready to see her grow up." Peter approached, enveloping her in a warm hug that still made her feel like she was being embraced for the first time. "You're raising an extraordinary daughter, Jenny. Kelly left a legacy of love, but who plants that love every day is us together. He kissed her forehead with that tenderness that hadn't diminished one bit in all these years. You know what impresses me most? How our love became even stronger after Grace was born. As if we had received not just a daughter, but a new dimension of what it means to love. Jenny melted in his arms, remembering how Peter had become not just an exceptional father, but an even more passionate husband. You save me every day, she whispered against his chest. Even when I don't know I need to be saved. He was right. In the years following Kelly's death, Jenny had become not just a dedicated mother, but an even more inspired educator, always supported by Peter's unwavering love. The school had grown exponentially, receiving children from neighboring cities and even other states, all attracted by the reputation of a place where every child was truly seen and valued. Grace's 10th birthday was celebrated at the school, with all the children who studied there and their families. Jenny and Peter had prepared a special surprise together, a photo album and letters that told not just the story of friendship between Jenny and Kelly, but also the romance that had flourished between Jenny and Peter, showing how true love had been the foundation of everything. Daddy, Grace said, flipping through the pages and stopping at a photo where Peter held pregnant Jenny. You look so in love. Peter smiled, pulling Jenny closer. We still are, princess. More each day. Grace flipped through the pages with reverence, delicately touching the yellowed photographs. Look, Mommy, she said, pointing to a photo of Jenny and Kelly at 12, embracing and smiling at the camera. You look like sisters. Jenny smiled, remembering how Kelly had insisted on taking that photo the day they had promised to be friends forever. We were more than sisters, she replied. We were souls who chose each other. At that age, Grace already demonstrated exceptional artistic talents, inherited from both genes and stories about Kelly. She spent hours drawing, painting, and creating small sculptures with clay she found in the garden. But more impressive was her ability to use art to console other children. When someone was sad or scared, Grace automatically offered a drawing made especially for that person, with colors and shapes that seemed to capture exactly what that soul needed to see. She's the strength we built together, the love that multiplies among the three of us, Peter said. He pulled Jenny into his arms right there, in the middle of the school garden, and kissed her as he had every day for years, as if it were the first and last time. Do you know I love you more today than the day we married? He whispered against her lips. Jenny laughed, that laugh he had fallen in love with since the first moment. Impossible, because I also love you more today than yesterday, and tomorrow I'll love you even more. At 18, Grace had become a stunning young woman, but it was her inner beauty that truly caught attention. She led community projects, organized campaigns to help needy families, and had created a mentorship program where older children helped younger ones with art and studies. The school had become not just an education center, but a beacon of hope for the entire region. At this age, Grace asked to visit the orphanage where Jenny and Kelly had grown up. The trip there was emotionally intense for Jenny, but having Peter by her side made everything possible. Throughout the entire journey, he held her hand, whispered words of encouragement, and constantly reminded her how she had transformed her own story of abandonment into a story of love. You're no longer that frightened girl, he said as they approached the building. You're the strongest woman I know, the most loving mother, the most incredible wife. and I have the privilege of walking beside you on this journey." The building had been renovated and modernized, but still maintained that atmosphere of temporary home she remembered so well. "This is where it all began," Grace said, standing in what had once been Jenny and Kelly's dormitory. "Your friendship, my existence, the school. Everything was born in this place." Jenny nodded, feeling as if she were closing a circle that had begun so long ago. "Sometimes the most painful places become the cradle of the greatest miracles," she replied. Grace spent a week working as a volunteer at the orphanage, using her artistic skills to brighten the environment and console the children. Jenny watched from a distance, seeing reflections of herself and Kelly in the way her daughter cared for the little ones. It was as if history were repeating itself, but this time with the wisdom of unconditional love from the beginning. On the last day of the visit, a 7-year-old girl approached Grace with a drawing. "It's for you," she said shyly. "It's an angel with 2 different wings, one golden and one silver." Grace was moved to realize that, without knowing, the child had perfectly captured the essence of her heritage. One wing representing Jenny, another representing Kelly, both sustaining her in her flight through life. At 22, Grace graduated in psychology and as class valedictorian. Her graduation speech was about the transformative power of chosen love, about how families of the heart can be stronger than families of blood, and about the importance of never giving up on finding our own light. Jenny cried openly during the speech, not from sadness, but from pride so deep it seemed to expand her chest until almost bursting. Peter held her hand and whispered in her ear, "Look what our love created, Jenny. Look how our little family became a force that transforms the world." His own eyes shone with emotion as he watched the daughter they had raised together with so much love. "Kelly would be so proud," he continued. "But I'm sure she's prouder of both of us, of how we remained united, of how our love only grew over the years." Jenny nodded, feeling a familiar and comforting presence around her, as if Kelly really were there, smiling at the extraordinary young woman Grace had become. That night, Jenny gave Grace Kelly's last letter, the one marked, "For when you decide your own path." The letter was longer than the others, written with the trembling but determined handwriting of Kelly's last days. "My dear Grace, my angel. If you're reading this, it means you've reached the moment to choose your own destiny. I want you to know that, regardless of the path you choose, you've already fulfilled the most important purpose of your life. You brought healing and redemption to lost souls like me. You were the miracle your mother deserved after so much suffering, the gift your father earned for being a good man, and the hope I needed to find peace. Now it's your turn to spread this magic throughout the world. Whether through art, education, medicine, or any other path your heart chooses, always remember you carry within you the power to transform lives. You are the result of the purest love that ever existed, and the world needs this light you carry. Live courageously, love unconditionally, and never forget you are loved beyond life and death. Your Aunt Kelly will always be with you, in every act of kindness, in every moment of compassion, in every time you choose love instead of fear." Grace read the letter several times, each word engraving itself in her heart like an invisible tattoo. "I know what I want to do," she said finally, looking at Jenny and Peter with determination shining in her eyes. "I want to really work in psychology and art therapy. I want to create a place where children and adults can heal their wounds through art, like Kelly did with me before I was even born." Over the years, Grace developed innovative art therapy techniques, specializing in work with orphan children and adults who had experienced abandonment trauma. Her master's thesis, titled Chosen Love: How Healing Relationships Can Transform Abandonment Trauma, became a reference in the field and earned her international recognition. At 25, Grace inaugurated the Kelly Center for Art Therapy, built on the grounds of the school her parents had created. The center offered free treatment for anyone who needed emotional healing, using techniques that combined art, music, therapy, and lots of love. On Inauguration Day, Jenny and Peter, proud, watched Grace cut the red ribbon of the center. With Peter by her side, Jenny felt deep and complete peace. They had built more than a school or therapy center. They had built an empire of love that would continue growing for generations. That night, as the family gathered to celebrate, Grace made a special toast. To Jenny and Peter, who showed me that true love isn't just a fairy tale story, but something built every day, with choices, with forgiveness, with mutual care. To my mother, who taught me that being chosen is an act of love. To my father, who proved that true fathers are those who love us unconditionally, and who love our mothers with a devotion that teaches us how we should be loved. To Kelly, who brought you two together and proved it's never too late to change. The toast was accompanied by tears of joy and hugs that seemed to last forever. Peter pulled Jenny into a special embrace, whispering in her ear, 26 years married, an incredible daughter, a life built together brick by brick. And I still fall in love with you every day. Jenny laughed through tears, that laugh he never tired of hearing. Peter, you still make me feel like that young teacher who fell madly in love with a good man who appeared at her school. Because I'm still that man, he replied, kissing her softly. And you're still the most beautiful woman I've ever known, inside and out. Later, when everyone had gone to sleep, Jenny went out to the garden and sat under the tree where Kelly had departed. The silver moonlight softly illuminated the leaves, creating an almost magical atmosphere. Thank you, she said aloud to the silent night. Thank you for teaching me that true love always finds a way back. Thank you for Grace, for our family, for everything we managed to build together. A gentle breeze touched her face, like one last goodbye kiss. True love, Jenny finally realized, isn't about being chosen by others. It's about choosing to love, choosing to forgive, choosing to be better today than we were yesterday. It's about creating bonds that transcend death and leaving a legacy that multiplies goodness in the world. And so, under Montana's starry sky, Jenny's story found its perfect ending, not an end, but a new beginning, a promise that love, once planted, grows forever, nourishing future generations with its immortal light. And in every sunrise over Montana's mountains, in every child who learned to love at the school, in every person who found healing at the Art Therapy Center, Kelly's promise remained alive. True love always finds a way, always transforms, always prevails. Always.